This week, lots of news. We're going to be talking about Albermarle's earnings and some information around that. Volvo has a really interesting new vehicle. There's some other car company that announced a certain price point on their car. And Uber has some interesting e-vehicle news too. Hi, I'm Sam Jaffe, Managing Director of Cairn Energy Research Advisors. Welcome to Batteries in 5, a weekly roundup of news about the battery industry. Notice something different about this week's episode? You're right, I'm wearing a baseball hat.
Hey!
It's actually the Global Lithium Podcast baseball hat. And we all know who the Global Lithium Podcast maestro is. Emily Hirsh has joined me today. What are you doing in Colorado, Emily?
Well, Sam, I was here in Denver for a Colorado School of Mines expert roundtable on critical materials and metals, one of which was lithium, and I felt like a visit to Denver and to Colorado would not be complete without doing my best to crash the battery 5 minutes. So here I am, and I am psyched.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. Let's start with Albermarle. They had an earnings announcement. What was interesting about what they said?
Yeah, so Albermarle had an earnings call this week where they made a 2025 demand forecast for lithium carbonate of 1.2 million tons, which would represent a 4x increase of the 300,000 tons from 2018. And a lot of the analysts in the industry, myself, my podcast co-host, thought that that was a bit of a stretch.
You think it's too much?
I think that it's too much given the amount of capital that would have to be invested in both new lithium operations and time machines to go back in time to get that production online by 2025.
Right.
It's unrealistic, and I don't think it's able to be achieved.
Yeah. They have an incentive to push that boundary up because the more of a market, the more attractive their stock is. But also, I mean, when on the podcast that we recorded earlier with Joe Lowry, when we talked about the Galaxy mine, 4-year startup time. They just got the money, 4 years. That's by 2025, we need billions of dollars to be flowing into the new mining operations, and we don't see it happening that way.
Well, one of the insights that Joe and I gleaned from your more financially savvy background was that it could be a strategy by Albemarle to pump up the numbers, if you will, to try to get some of the debt and some of the financing from the institutional capital that's lacking. So
right.
I guess we will see if that strategy pans out, and I will be waiting.
Yeah, okay. We had an announcement about some new cars. Honda, Hyundai, Kia, Peugeot all made announcements. One I want to talk about though. There was a certain car company that announced a car that's in a relatively moderate price range. Volvo Polestar 2. They announced their sedan that's a fully battery electric car. Why I think it's interesting, and you notice I kind of set you up for Tesla. They made that $35,000 car announcement. Yeah, significant, but everybody's been waiting for it to happen. It's the same car, and they said in the first quarter Tesla did that they're going to lose money on it. So what is really the news there? But I think the Volvo car is really interesting. It's a purpose-built from the bottom up electric vehicle. They put a lot of their future hopes into this Polestar brand of electric vehicles, and most importantly, it looks nice. It's a nice looking car, kind of Ford Mustang-y. And it's a $45,000 or 45,000 euro price point.
Even more importantly, Sam, what kind of battery is going to be in that Polestar?
It's probably going to be NMC, probably from LG Chem. They don't announce exactly what kind of battery it is, but Geely, the parent company of Volvo, has a big partnership with LG Chem. So that's probably what's going into it, and it's going to be made in China. That's significant too.
What else is happening in the EV space for those of us who are stuck in our little lithium bubble?
Well, we're starting to see the 2021 cars that will be available in 2021. It's really interesting because a lot of these cars, the serious announcements that are coming from BMW, from Audi, from Mercedes, from Volvo, they all kind of trigger right after January 1st, 2021. And the reason why is that it's in their best interest due to EU regulations to see a dramatic jump in the environmental quality of their cars because of the way the regulations are structured. So it's almost like they're waiting before they make this big EV push, and then all of a sudden on January 1st, 2021, it's going to happen in a big way.
You also mentioned Uber.
Yeah, so Uber they bought a mobility as a service e-bike company called Jump. And Jump, really interesting company. I remember 10 years ago I heard about this company called Social Bicycles. Sounds kind of like a communist uprising or something.
Does sound like a communist uprising.
Not the best startup name, but it was, they had this idea of just putting these little devices that had a lock and had an app on it, and you could just lock it anywhere, lock the bike anywhere in the city and find it like you can in Uber. It was a great idea. It took 10 years to finally turn it into Jump, and then Uber bought it. They're rolling out these electric bicycles as a mobility as a service type of, with the app, you can rent it, you can ride it, just put it anywhere. So what's interesting is they just announced a study that they did in their first rollout city, which was Sacramento, California, and the study showed that immediately, within 1 month, more people were taking e-bike rides than calling Uber cars. It just shows, I mean, this is a huge change in the transportation industry, and shows how quickly the uptake can happen.
Well, that's interesting, because in my trips to China, I've seen a lot of those bikes, as you described, that are sort of self-locking. You don't need an infrastructure, an apparatus to kind of clunk them into and lock them. And I think that especially as traffic rises, as people enjoy being outside, especially if the price point, I assume, is much lower than an Uber car, an Uber vehicle, it becomes a quicker, more economic and more enjoyable way for people to get from A to B. And it's exciting to see, I think, Uber jumping into this game. See what I did there?
Mm-hmm.
Jumping.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to see what happens.
It is, but also China's a cautionary tale, because the first two big bike sharing companies there are essentially bankrupt now. You can do this too fast, too quickly. It'll be really interesting to see how the companies, both the scooter companies, Lime, Jump, Bird, Lime and Bird, and then Jump, the bicycle company, how they'll do this in a way that won't just do the same thing that happened in China.
Well, I think it's an interesting case to look at, because it's a market with very low barriers to entry, yeah. And the Ubers of the world and the Limes of the world can spend a lot of money proving out a business model, right. And then face essentially unlimited competition from anybody who can buy a few bikes.
If your business development is, we need to write an app, that's usually a problem. All right, that's it for this week's episode. I mentioned I'll be in China for a U.S.-China EV partnership meeting at the end of March. You going anywhere soon?
I'll be in Toronto next week at PDAC, and then I will be in China in April. And don't miss Sam Jaffe on the next episode of the Global Lithium podcast, which should be hitting the airwaves next week at some point. So it's been good.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Emily.
Thank you, Sam.